Sure. The dollar milkshake is really a framework for how I see a sovereign debt and currency crisis play out. Um, I did kind of specify this earlier with my background, but in my entire career, I've always been in a position where I managed money for individuals. And the individuals that I work with are extremely smart, extremely successful, but they're not necessarily finance people. So, if I started talking about credit default swaps or interest rate policy or Fed meeting minutes, their eyes would probably start to glaze over. So I always have to kind of figure out a simplified way of explaining to them the way I think things are heading, what's going to happen. And the dollar milkshake was a simplified way for me to explain that post global financial crisis, the world as a whole responded by flooding the system with stimulus, liquidity, bailouts, however you want to define the extraordinary monetary policies that came out of the global financial crisis. But I thought as we got into the late 2018, 2019 timeframe, I could see this currency crisis developing. It's taken longer to develop than I thought it would, but it kind of seems to be playing out now. And I thought what would happen in this crisis was that global capital would flee the rest of the world and work its way into the US dollar, into US dollar, and into US markets. And I thought it would become a self-perpetuating system. And there's a movie called There Will Be Blood that Daniel Day-Lewis, I think he won the Oscar for this role, where he's this oil baron and he's negotiating a piece of land that's right next to his. And the other oil guy wants, Daniel Day-Lewis to buy his plot of land. And he says, if you buy my land, you can have all the oil underneath it. And Daniel Day-Lewis says, I don't really need to buy your land. All I have to do is stick a straw down into the ground and I can drink up all your oil. And he says, I can drink your milkshake. And when I heard that, I thought that was a very good analogy for what I see happening. I think for a number of reasons, some deserved, maybe some not deserved. Some people like it, some people don't like it. But I think for a number of reasons, the U.S. has a lot of advantages that the rest of the world just does not have. And that is the straw. And I think the milkshake is all this liquidity, all this stimulus, all the bailouts. Again, however you want to define those policies after the global financial crisis, that's the milkshake that was put into the system. But because the U.S. has the straw, we kind of have the ability to drink it up. And I think that's kind of what we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years. Despite, the volatility we've had along the way, U.S. asset prices have doubled over the last 4 or 5 years. The U.S. dollar's up 20%, over the last couple of years. And I said, even initially, I said, well, I thought these asset prices would rise. I thought it would be punctuated by terrifying drawdowns along the way. And that's really what we've seen. We saw, a hard drawdown in late 2018. We saw another hard drawdown in 2020. We're seeing a hard drawdown now. But, if you zoom out and you look over the last 3, 4, 5 years, the dollar's higher, U.S. assets are higher versus the rest of the world. And it seems that that's kind of the way it's headed to me.
Yeah. We're the ones with the straw. We've plunked it down. We're sucking all of that up. Let's explore, where do you think we are? You mentioned it's taken a little bit longer for this dollar milkshake theory to play out. Where do you think we are? I guess, I don't know how you would describe it, but within the dollar milkshake theory framework, like an inning or something. I don't know how you want to describe it, but where are we on it?
It's really hard to pinpoint this. And so first of all, I'll say it's very possible I'm wrong. If I had to speculate, I think we're probably in the 4th or 5th inning. Maybe we're not quite halfway through it. And the reason I say that is that the dollar going higher at the expense of the rest of the world, it's not going to be allowed to happen without it trying to be counteracted along the way. And what I mean by that is the dollar, is up significantly this year, and it's already causing significant problems around the world. Now, to a certain extent, I think the United States likes this because it's kind of reinforcing their dominance over the rest of the world, but they don't want it to be so bad that it causes the whole system to collapse. And if the dollar was just allowed to rise unimpeded, it would literally collapse the system. So I think that there will be points along the way where policies will be changed or slowed or put in place that would at least temporarily halt the dollar's rise. And if you think about it, this is kind of what we saw after the global financial crisis in 2008. The dollar got very strong at that point. There was a global margin call on the dollar. The whole world needed dollars. Asset prices were falling around the world. And so that's when the world came together and, again, flooded the system with this milkshake. Same thing again happened after COVID, right? The dollar got very strong in the COVID crisis. The world came together. They worked together. They flooded the market again with bailouts, stimulus, QE, monetary policy, and it caused the dollar to temporarily fall down. But here we are again, and the dollar's higher. So I think what's likely to happen is sometime probably in the next, 3 to 6 months, that there will be some kind of a pivot or some kind of a response by the Federal Reserve and some of the other monetary agencies that will probably slow down the dollar's rise. And then maybe we get a period of 3, 6, 9 months where the dollar's weak for a while, asset prices start to rise again, but then I think we'll hit another, it'll pop up again, and then maybe the dollar goes on another run. And a part of the reason that I don't think it will be a smooth, it's not just going to go in one direction in a smooth manner, is there are so many different pieces to this. And I often try to tell it in a linear story, but it's not really a linear story. And it could be that chapter 3 comes before chapter 2 and chapter 5 comes after chapter 7. And what I mean by that is there's economics that are at play here. There's domestic politics that are at play here. There's geopolitics that are at play here. There's an energy crisis that's at play here, but it's all kind of happening at the same time. And it's kind of happening to all places around the world at the same time. And so to a certain extent, it's a perfect storm. And it just so happens that because the US dollar underlies the whole system, when you have a storm, that underlying collateral tends to rise in value. Now, again, it doesn't, even when you have a hurricane or a bad storm, maybe you get some winds and some lightning and it's really bad, and then it kind of quiets down for an hour or two, and then you get another gust. It's kind of like that. I don't think this is just going to be a bomb that goes off and then everything's done immediately. I expect it to kind of play out over a number of years.
Yeah. What do you think the end game is?
It's a very good question. I think ultimately what's going to happen is I think the dollar will get to a level, I think it will get away from the Federal Reserve, that it'll even get stronger than they want it to be. And I think what's going to happen is that the world will have to come together and agree to some kind of a monetary reset or another Plaza Accord or some kind of a introduction of a new system, for lack of a better way of saying it, that kind of takes a lot of these bad debts off the table, kind of clears the field, and so that we can kind of start anew. Now, whether that's done willingly or unwillingly, or whether it's forced upon them, I don't really know, but I think that's kind of where we're headed. A lot of the problems that we've seen over the last, call it 25 years, have never been dealt with. The can has been kicked down the road. And I think Americans in general are kind of familiar with this idea that every time that we've had a crisis, we've kicked the can down the road, we've borrowed more money than before, we've kind of papered over the problem, and eventually that day is going to come where we kind of come upon that can again. And I think that that's correct, but I think it's true for the whole world. I don't think that this is a uniquely American phenomenon. I think it's true in Japan, it's true in Europe, it's true in China, it's true in Russia. And it just kind of so happens that everybody's kind of converging on these cans that they've collectively kicked down the road. And I think we are, kind of, I don't want to say we're in the end stages, because I think this is going to take another several years to play out. But I think that's where it's headed. I think it's headed towards a new system or a new way of doing it. And I think what you're seeing on a big level right now is the United States is trying to hold on to its position as the global leader. And you're seeing places like China and Russia trying to edge their way into becoming the new global leader. And I think anybody that has ever been in a position of power knows you never willingly give away power. Everybody wants to maintain it, right? And so for the U.S. to lose that role, I think somebody would have to take it from them. And I don't think that the U.S. would ever give that away willingly. And as a result, I think that is probably likely to be a volatile event should it happen.
Hey everyone, I really hope you enjoyed that video. Be sure to hit that like button, the subscribe, and that bell so you won't miss any new videos.